Hey everybody, what's going on? So today in this video we are going to be talking about sorry, I had to move the camera. We're going to be talking about my top 8 topwater lures. Now 4 of them are kind of unconventional topwater lures that I don't think very many people ever use as topwater lures, but they're probably some of my favorite topwater lures there are. And then we have my other 5 baits that I use regularly and have caught a lot of fish on. So first off, we're going to talk about the soft plastic baits, the baits that are not used very often as topwater baits, but I've used them and I've caught tons of fish on them. So first, we're going to talk about the weightless finesse worm. So obviously my favorite color of weightless finesse worms for topwater fishing on the mats is white, but honestly if you're going to be fishing mats like I normally do, the color doesn't really matter because they can't really see it all that well. All they can see is kind of the silhouette. They don't really see the color. But white is my favorite just because that's what color I normally use. So what I do is put a 3/0 or 4/0. Sometimes I'll even go all the way down to a 2/0. But I'm throwing this stuff on a spinning rod. The only one out of all these, I'll show you guys those here in a second, but 2 of these baits I'll be throwing on a spinning rod. And I'll tell you guys those. This one here I will be throwing on a spinning rod just because it's a little bit hard to throw something this small and weightless on a bait caster. So I throw it on a spinning rod. You can throw it on a bait caster. I just personally don't. But white 6-inch finesse worm is what this here is. 4/0 eagle claw hook. And what I do with them is cast it out right on the mats. When the fish don't want to come up on a frog and they don't want to come up after a buzzing frog or something, I'll pull out one of these, cast it out on top of the mats. It basically just sits on the mat, and then every once in a while you just want to give it such a very subtle twitch, just to where the bait moves just a little bit. Now, a lot of people will think that that's not moving it it's not moving at all. It's not really giving it the action or anything. But I've caught so many fish just casting out a soft plastic worm on top of a mat, and just every once in a while it just sits there. Then every once in a while I'll just go. Just like that. Just little bitty tiny movements. Not even, twitch, 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 like nothing like that. You're just sitting it right there on the mat. And it looks like a big bug or a bird, a frog. It looks like just about anything that could be really easily to grab. And them bass, they're opportunists. They eat just about anything they can get. If they can get their mouth around it, they're going to eat it. And this right here is a perfect little snack for them. You set it on that mat and they're going to come up for it. Now, a little bit of history about this thing right here. I've talked about it before, but I don't think I ever actually made a video talking about it. But one day, my dad and me were getting up to the pond. He's like, hey, do you want to do a bet? And I was like, sure. So we make a bet for $5. Best 5 fish, the biggest 5 fish. So I'm sitting there and I'm throwing a spinnerbait. I'm throwing square bill. I was throwing this. I was also throwing the frog, which is not in this video, and I'll tell you why here in a second. I was also throwing this Spro popping frog. I just couldn't get a fish to come up on it, so I was like, okay, I'll switch to a weightless trick worm and kind of fish it around on like a soft plastic jerkbait. Well, I got to this area where there was a lot of mats, and I was like, okay, I'll just cast it on top of the mats and fish it really slowly, see what would happen. So I did that. I think it was my second cast doing that. I caught about a 3.5 pounder, and I was like, hey, you know what? Finally caught a fish. So I kept doing it. About probably within 10 minutes, I had 5 fish for somewhere in the realm of about 14 pounds. Actually, I had 4 fish for 14 pounds, excuse me. And that was it. That's all I was able to catch. I couldn't catch a single other fish. They just moved out, I guess. But I was using a spinning rod with 10-pound test line. I was actually using a 2/0 hook and a white finesse worm. And that's how I won that bet. I actually won with only 4 fish, but they weighed more than his 5, so I actually won the bet. So that's a little bit of a history of this rig. I've used it and I've won, I guess you could say tournaments, but it was kind of just a bet that me and my dad had. So that there definitely works. I'll be definitely using that this year. Another thing that I'll be throwing on a spinning rod is this rig right here. This is something that you'll use light line, 10-pound test to 8-pound test if you're gutsy enough. And you can even go lighter if you're crazy. But this is something that I do think will really catch fish. It's got an awesome action, and that is a weightless rigged grub. Now, some companies do make soft plastic topwater baits that are basically grubs. but they're not as popular as a lot of people use them. A lot of people just use them on a jig head as a normal grub. They don't use them as topwater baits, but I have used the grubs as topwater baits and had some really cool blow-ups. Never was able to catch any of them because, you know, most of the time the fish around here like slow-moving baits. You know, every once in a while you can get one to come up on a fast-moving bait and hook them, but, you know, sometimes they don't. I got a lot of hits on a soft plastic grub the last time I threw it. This is actually a 1/0 hook. This is a teeny tiny little 1/0 straight shank hook, and it's just big enough. It's actually about perfect size, really, for this bait because it goes all the way till right here. The hook point is right there, and if that fish even just grabs the tail, it'll get hooked, and I like that. I like that setup, you know, 10-pound or 8-pound test. I usually use 10-pound just because I think it's tough enough to pull them out of the cover if it's not like super heavy cover. I've pulled some, you know, 3.5, 4-pounders out of pretty thick stuff with 10-pound test and never broke it. So, you know, that's just my opinion. But that there is a really good bait as well. Something else, these are two baits that I've fished them on topwater before. I fished this one on topwater. I fished the other one on topwater, but I just did it today, and it's like the water temperature is probably 40s. So obviously I wasn't going to get one to come up on it today. But it does have a really good action on it, and I'll have to do a video on that here soon because the pond is unfrozen currently, and looks like it's not going to get real cold, so I think I might be able to make a couple videos, which will be awesome. But this one here, I have had a couple blow-ups on it and have caught one fish on this bait using it as topwater. This is the 7-inch DLC Doc's Lure Company Wrangler worm. Also, this is the 3-inch grub by Doc's Lure Company in the minnow gray. This is the Doc's Lure Company 6-inch finesse worm in white. This one here, the 7-inch Wrangler worm, and this is actually the electric blue color with some blue and silver flake. This is a 3/0 hook, perfect size hook in my opinion. And basically you're just imitating a snake is pretty much what you're imitating. These baits, especially this one, and I'll talk about the next one here in a second, but it looks like a snake. I rigged it up one time, cast it out there, and was able to get a fish to come up on it like on my second cast, I think, and then was able to get that fish to hit it on my second cast after the blow up. But something that I do is I will rig it. If you look at the tail, the body, it's wider here, and it kind of thins out this way. I'll rig it to where that wide part is with the hook. It's straight with the hook. I don't know if it really changes the action a whole lot, but I did notice it changed the action just a hair bit, and I thought that made a better action. I don't know. I don't really think it matters a whole lot when it comes to that. I think more of it's more reaction strike over, you know, seeing it, because I mean, this bright blue bait doesn't really look like a snake, but when it's buzzing across the surface pretty fast, you know, reaction strike is, hey, there's something easy, they can get it and they'll grab it. So that's a really good bait as well. Ribbon tail worms are a pretty good topwater bait. Now we're going to get into the big baits. This is the big bait. This is the new 12-inch Wrangler worm. This is actually crystal shad with blue and purple flake. It's a big bait. It's a really big bait. I've actually got a 6/0 swim bait hook, weightless swim bait hook, and it's even pretty small for it. I wish I had like a 7 or an 8/0, but it's thinner wire. You know, I wish I could have like what are they called? The jungle hooks, the EWG hooks that Owner makes, but I don't have any currently. But it's an awesome topwater action. I tell you what, I tied this on. I actually already took the line off of it. I was going to show you that I had it tied on, but I took it off. Had it tied on one of my bait casters and thought, you know what, let's go cast it out and see what kind of action it has. Because, I mean, obviously I'm not going to get any blow-ups. Mother Nature just decided to dump like probably half a foot, if not a foot of rain. Like it just freaking, boom, just freaking slammed us. It was raining yesterday. You guys seen that. And it just poured down rain all day today. But I was able to get out there a little bit and wasn't able to catch anything. Did get a couple good bites on, actually not that jig that's on the rod over there. Was able to get a couple bites on a jig, but wasn't able to capitalize on them. But I took this out there and casted it out and was sitting there buzzing across the surface. I was like, man, this thing looks like a snake. Like, I mean, I'm talking like not even as the lure company owner. I'm talking as a fisherman. I mean, I tell you what, if people were out like in a kayak and you snuck up there and you casted this thing past them and just started reeling this across, I'd say they probably would get scared thinking it's a snake. I mean, it looks super real. Like when it was going across the water, it looked like a snake. And if somebody didn't know you was fishing there, they'd probably think it was a snake. It just looks super duper real. It looks like a snake just slithering across the water. That tail, and even the body, it kind of gives it more of a little bit of a slithering action because of the tail. And it's pretty cool. I don't know if a lot of people fish with snake baits. I know a lot of people fish those new, the Lunker Hunt Link. I have one of those. And the hard baits, but I don't think a whole lot of people throw like soft plastic snake baits. But this here would definitely be a great bait if somebody was out, you know, in a pond that has a lot of snakes. I think the green pumpkin color buzzing across the surface or the black and blue, magic color would be pretty cool as well. I'm excited about that. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about the hard baits. Now, you guys seen this just a while back. This is the Head and Topwater Tiny Torpedo. This was my first ever bass lure. And it has to be in these videos just because of the what's that word? Sentimental value. That's the word. The sentimental value of this bait. It has to be in the video. I can't make a topwater lure video without showing the first topwater lure. And that there is it. Not going to go too far into that. If you guys want to watch the video where I break down that lure and a couple other lures, you can go back and watch that. Next, one of my newer baits. I actually got this last year, actually, so I guess it's not really all that new. But this was the bait that I caught my personal best. If you guys have never seen my personal best, it is a 5-pound, 2-ounce bass that I caught on the very first cast at a lake I've never even seen or been to before. Very first cast, 30 pounds straight braid. Actually, it's 50 pound. 50 pounds straight braid with a big catfishing spinning rod. Bombed this thing out there, and it hit, that bass hit with about 6 inches of line out from the rod tip. And scared the bejesus out of me. Basically, all I had time to do was set the hook and flip it on land. It's a 5-pound, 2-ounce bass, and it was on this baby right here. Bone-colored Whopper Plopper 130. This was not actually my first Whopper Plopper. I have a 90. Had some of the coolest blow-ups I've ever had on the topwater bait with that 90, but just never could hook up. So I was like, you know what? I want to catch a big fish in the fall. I want to get a big topwater blow-up, so I'm going to buy the giant 130. So I was like, you know what? Why not? So I got on eBay, buy it now, waited a week, got it, showed all my family, and they were like, you're crazy. This is not going to work. So went out to this lake. Basically, my dad told me, don't ask any questions. We're going out to a secret lake. And so I was like, okay. So we went. And we got there, went back behind this guy's house. It's not really a secret lake, but it's a lake I've never been to before. And we got there, went up behind this guy's house. As I walked up there, there was a huge, like, I'm talking like 5-6 pound bass swim out from the dock that goes out. And I was like, oh, dang, there was a nice fish. So I was like, okay, maybe this place is full of fish. Later on, I would find out it's not. Been there 3 times in my kayak, twice or 3 times in my kayak, and only was able to catch 1 fish out of all those times. Got there, was like, okay, I'm going to cast this out. So my dad, as I bombed this thing out there, he says, you better hope you have that tied on good. Don't want to lose that. Because this, at the time, this was probably my most expensive lure. Now my most expensive lure is, if I can get it, is this. This is $17. And at the time, this one, I paid $14.50 for this, I think. So at the time, this was my most expensive lure. He's like, don't break it off. So I bomb it out there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just buzzing it across. And I get to the dock, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe this one will come out, and then nothing happens. So I reel it all the way up, and I'm getting ready to, you know, pull it out and flip my bail and make another cast. And as I get ready to pull it out, I just feel a bunch of water hit my leg, a big splash, and my rod tip just goes, whoop. So I'm like, oh crap, just set the hook on this fish, and I see him make one head shake. That's the only thing he did, was make one head shake, and I just lifted it straight up. Now I'm talking, you know, medium action spinning rod, not even a bass rod, it's actually a catfish rod. 50 pounds straight braid, Not exactly the smartest thing to do. And I just freaking set the hook home and lifted it straight up and set it on the bank. And I had that fish. That fish had that bait all the way down. It had the back treble almost in its throat. He ate it so fast. And that was how I caught my first 5-pounder. First scaled and weighed 5-pounder. That is my personal best. Hoping to break that with this year, or this next year, whatever you want to say. I call it this year just because it's this season, next season, whatever. But that's how I caught my personal best with this. You guys have seen that picture, I'm sure. I've only caught 2 fish on this bait. One of them was probably about a 2.5-pounder that also hit with about he probably hit with a foot of line out. And the first fish that I caught had about with 6 inches of line out. So I started calling it the close combat bait because literally the only 2 fish I've ever caught were within like probably 3 feet of the bank. So I call it a close combat bait just because only 2 fish I've ever caught were like with that much line out from the rod tip. Next, this is one of my first baits. This is actually not the first bait, but this is one of the first baits that I ever threw, was a popper. And this here is a medium-sized popper. This is my medium-sized one. I have a bigger one, and I have a smaller one, but this is the medium one. Rebel Foxy Shad. So not Sexy Shad like every other company makes. It's Foxy Shad. It's got a big red mouth, kind of a clear color, blue back, chartreuse side. It's a really good bait for when the bluegill are bedding. I love throwing that thing over bluegill beds and watching either bass or bluegill come up on it. It's a lot of fun to fish poppers because it's a very slow, methodical way of fishing. I fish them super duper slow, like slower than you've ever seen somebody fish a popper. Like I'm talking, if somebody like Kevin Van Dam watched me fish a popper, they would probably have a panic attack because I'm literally moving it like one, and then I let it sit there. Let all the ripples go away, and once all the ripples are away, I'll pop it again. Like I'm fishing it so freaking slow, it's almost stupid. But I've caught some pretty good fish on poppers. I've caught some 3.5, 4-pounders on poppers. And you do it really slowly, very methodically fishing it. I don't think methodically is a word. Methodical-like, fishing it very slowly. And I've caught some decent ones doing that. So, I like doing it really slowly. I fish topwater pretty slow most of the time unless I'm throwing something like a soft plastic bait or a whopper plopper. Then I'll fish a little bit faster. Next is, you guys probably know the sound. I've talked about this bait so much I don't even think I need to introduce it anymore because it is just that much of a popular bait. If I'm fishing topwater or if the fish aren't even hitting topwater, I'll throw this thing anyway and most likely get a fish to blow up on it. Quick little story. This was what was this? Middle of October somewhere. And I decide, you know what, me and my mom are going to go fishing. Me and my mom and my brother decided to go fishing. And we're sitting there. I'm bored. So I've been throwing, I threw 6-inch swimmer around. Actually had a good bite on that. Missed it though. Threw all different types of stuff around. Just couldn't catch a fish. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to tie this on. And that was the last bait I was going to fish with. I was going to throw it the whole day. So I tied it on, just bombed it out there like my 6th cast or something. Was working it all the way to the bank, and it probably maybe 3 feet of line out just went whoom, and about a 3.5, 4-pounder came up and crushed it. But somehow, even though there's 9 hook points, it didn't get any of them. I don't know how. I don't know how you can miss something like that, but it did, and I was pretty surprised by that. And that's going kind of into something there with the whopper plopper and that sexy dog walking bait. Is I see so many people when they're fishing topwater or any bait really, when it gets like 4 or 5 feet out from the boat, they'll just burn it back in and make another cast. In my opinion, that is one of the stupidest mistakes that people make in bass fishing. That's just my opinion. You may have your own opinion. But in my opinion, that's one of the stupidest mistakes a bass fisherman can make. Because so many times have I been throwing a bait and literally get it within 2 feet of the bank and just hits it and I set the hook and I catch it. That's what happened. The only 2 fish I've ever caught on a Whopper Plopper 130 was doing that. They hit with pretty much less than a foot of line out, both of them. I've caught one of my personal bests. This was like my first 3.5 pounder with about 4 feet of line out, throwing this. Just buzzing it across really slowly. I've caught numerous big bluegill and bass throwing poppers right up next to the bank, you know, with just a few inches of line out. And it's a very common mistake that I see people do. And if there's anything in this video that I want you to take away from this video, I want you to take that away. Because if you're going to go topwater fishing next summer, don't reel it in when you got like 4 feet of line out, because there could be a fish sitting underneath of it. It could be the biggest fish you've ever seen in your life. It could be the world record bass, especially if you're on a big lake. If I went down to Chickamauga or Lake Fork or Lake Falcon, I'm going to make every single cast count. I'm going to make my bait sit in the water as long as possible during every single cast, because every cast you could be going by a 10-pounder, a 12-pounder, a 20-pounder, and not even know it. And that's a big mistake that I see a lot of people make. You know, I see a lot of people, I've done it, I've been on that side as well, where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get a bite this cast, just start burning it in, and all of a sudden, like a 4.5, 5-pounder just comes up and blows up with like a foot away from your bait, but they're trying to chase it anyway. And so many times I've missed fish and not gotten them to come back on it because I've messed up. And it happens so often. But if you guys even made it this point in the video, I appreciate you. Thank you very much for watching this far into the video. I know a lot of people don't. Thank you to, I can't remember their names. You guys know who you are, though. That let me know that YouTube decided to take a bunch of subscribers from a whole lot of people, and because they were fake accounts and stuff. I didn't even realize this. I didn't know what was going on. Thank you to those people, though, because I gained like 1 subscriber, and then all of a sudden, overnight, I woke up like 2 o'clock in the morning and checked my phone to post the video, and I was down to 792. I went from 813, 814 to 792 all of a sudden, which kind of, it didn't make me too happy, I can tell you that. But, you know, whatever. But yeah, to my loyal subscribers, I do appreciate you very much. Thank you if you did make it to this point in the video. If you did make it to this point in the video, please say so down in the comments, because I want to see how many people actually make it back into this part of the video. So yeah, thank you guys for watching once again. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know if you guys have ever had any luck with any of the lures I shown in this video. Bye.